I could use snapping here to snap it to the underlying model as well, but hey, why do it the easy way? Okay. Now we have our models lined up. I can select the old model, delete me, make sure it's that one, and delete it. Let's exit isolation mode. Okay. So now we have our two columns here using the underlying same texture. We've just swapped it up a bit on the top, that pigeon bombing attack there on the side. So now we have two textures. We're just going to create two more, and then we can use them, start repeating them around the outside of the terrace here. So let's just quickly save our file. I'm just saving it to be on the safe side. I don't want Max to crash, and even though Max does have a feature whereby it will auto, if it can, it'll auto save before it crashes. I don't like to risk it. No problems. But like I said though, if you're just creating models for yourself, then use PNG. PNG is fine. I've just gotten into the habit over the years to use Targa. That's all. Let's jump back into Mari. Let's turn off that unique one that we have there. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. And I also want to turn off the layer at the top here and the layer at the top here. And let's throw on a new layer and do something a little bit different at the top. So I'm just going to move our model in, rotate it around a bit, and find another unique looking texture. And these are just alpha maps that I'm using to do this dirt mapping with. Nothing special about them, they're just more of a grayscale map really. They always make very good dirt maps. Let's see what this one looks like. No, not that one. Let me scale that back. This one could be interesting. Let's use this one. So we're working on a new layer. We've turned off the three layers we made to do the variation from the last texture. Just going to scale that back a bit. Move it up. Paint that in. Again, we're only concerned really with the white part of the texture on this, not the black. We'll bake that down. Yeah, no, you can't use an alpha channel in a JPEG. JPEG will give you the smallest file size. It's a lousy compression format though, so what it does to reduce its file size, as you probably know, is it throws information away, and generally you wouldn't want to use JPEG. You maybe use JPEG at the very end after you've done all your texturing work and you've got your original PSD files or Targa files or PNG files. You could then save it out to JPEG to before you use it to reduce the file size during the render, so your texture sizes aren't quite as large. As you said, it doesn't keep alpha information, so you can't use any alpha in the JPEG, and you will lose some information when you save as a JPEG. Some of the color information it gets thrown out when it's saved as JPEG, but it's good for reducing the file size, particularly if you're doing a render and you don't want to and you want to save memory in the computer. So I'm just going to move that texture along a bit so it's a little bit different. Yeah, a lot of people have problems with alpha maps and things, particularly if they're not into design work or texturing work. They don't really understand what an alpha map is. or what it's used for. And as you know, it's very useful to have helper maps. So, okay, let's break that down. Even though this is quite a noticeably repeating texture, you're not. We're not using it. We're only using it to add some difference to the other columns along the top. So even though it's quite a strongly unique repeating pattern, it's not going to be too noticeable or too bad to use it. Break that down. And I'm not painting in all of the same sections of the texture. I'm just selecting different bits and pieces. Like, for instance, here I'm going to only select this bit here and this bit here. And that way it's less noticeable that you're using the same texture around the whole of the outside of that top of the column. Just going to move that up a bit. Okay, we'll bake that down. Let's move back around. Move that out of the way. I think you're right. No, people won't be looking at each individual side of every column. That's exactly right. Which is why we can get away with only doing 3 or 4 different textures and then just repeating them around the outside of the balcony. People won't notice. And yeah, they're not going to look at each individual side of the column either. So let's maybe throw an add on that, and we'll pull it back a bit so it's not quite so strong and in your face. Alright, let's throw down a new layer. And find a new texture for the side just here. We went dark, I think, with the last one. Let me just double check that. Yeah, we went dark with the last one. I think we'll go white with this one, so that adds just a bit more variation again. So this texture should work quite well. We're just going to angle it up. I'm going to... I think I'll have the white on the bottom, actually. So just going to scale that up. Rotate it around. Just looking at the underlying geometry of the model. Yeah. I'm actually going to scale it down a bit. Okay, we're working a new layer. Again, we're not concerned with the black. We're only concerned with the white part of the texture now. Just going to bake that down. Well, that's exactly right. 4 individual columns textured, equivalent to 16 columns if you rotate them. That's right. And we've probably got about 16 to 20 columns along the top of that garden terrace that we've got to texture up. So 4 textures will be plenty for what we need to do. And that's another reason why you shouldn't waste your time texturing each column individually for something that's not going to be noticed, and it's more of a, you're wasting your time by doing that. Like I said, though, if you really enjoy texturing and you really want to texture every column individually, then hey, who's stopping you? Go for it. But like I said, generally too, when you're working for a studio, they don't want you to spend too much time working on something like that. They want it done quickly, and they want it now, or they want it yesterday. That's so you always got time constraints when you're working in a studio environment. And this is just a quick way to save yourself a little bit of time. Yeah, I do. I use 3D Studio Max pretty much exclusively now. Sometimes when I've worked in studios in the past, I've used Maya, and I've dabbled with Maya, but all my 3D modeling work is done in Max. if I'm doing game development work, I do a lot of work now in Unreal Engine from Epic Games, because their engine is probably one of the best around at the moment. But as far as modeling goes, it's 3D Studio Max. And then for my environment work, I use Eon View, which is what I'll be using this model in. Once we've textured everything up, I'll take it into View, and we'll create an environment for it and a beauty render for it, which is what I do before I put them on my my web pages or in my store on the Creative Market on Eon Cornucopia 3D. I'll do a beauty render, and I do that in View. So, and I'll show you how I do that as well. So once I've finished texturing this model up, I'll export it and import it into Eon View, and we'll create an environment for it and do a beauty render, and probably do some color correction in Photoshop as well. But that's at the very end. What is it that you use? Do you use Max? What 3D software are you using, Galen? Okay, we'll bake that down. Let's go and add and pull it back. Okay. And again, I'm going to throw on a unique dirt map here on the side. So it's going to throw on a new layer. See, we're always working in threes. We've got 3 for that one. There's 3 for this new texture that we're creating. Maya in Blender, yeah. You know, it's funny you say that, because I couldn't really get the hang of Maya. I love Max, and I've used Max for many years, and I find it very easy to use. But when I tried to use Maya, I couldn't get my head around that. So it's interesting you say that you use Maya and you couldn't get your head around Max. I haven't personally used Blender, but I know the software, and I know it's very good. So, but hey, I'm glad you can use Max, because I have a problem with Max. Sorry, you can use Maya, because I have a problem with Maya. I don't find it as easy to use as Max. Okay, we're on a new layer. Let's find an interesting texture. Let's go with this one. Just going to rotate it around. Again, we're working on a new layer. I'm just going to move the model around so I'm not painting at too much of an angle, so I don't get texture stretching as I'm painting down. I'm just going to move that maybe to the side a bit. Paint that in. Yeah, Blended more hotkey driven than Maya. Yeah, I guess that's very true. I believe you can set up hotkeys in Maya, though, in the preferences, but like I said, Blender is a great piece of 3D software to use. It's used by a lot of people as well. And like I said, I never got my head around Maya, really. Let's just bake that down. Move that out of the way. Let's try doing an adjustment stack on this. So let's put an invert on it. An invert doesn't always work. In this case, it's not really going to work for us, I don't think. And yeah, no, it's not going to work. So let's remove that adjustment stack. And let's go with a maybe a screen or an overlay. No, let's go with an add. And let's pull it right back. And I think I might, just to add a bit more variation to this third texture map, throw one more layer on. And grab let's see what this one looks like. I'm just going to scale that up a bit. and move my model. Again, now I'm working on the corner here, so I'm going across two sides at once. I'm going to angle the model up a bit, also back a bit. I'm not really interested in the top part, I'm more interested in this bottom part of this texture, I think. So again, I'm working on a new layer. I'm going to paint this in. Just releasing the texture as I paint so I can get a better idea of what I'm painting in. Just go around the bit that I want. Something like that, and I'll bake that down. Okay, let's just play with our layer style here. Let's see if we can do an invert on this one. Yeah, again, I don't really think an invert's going to work for us. It might. Let's just pull that back. Something like that. So now we have a very different look to it again. Let's export this version. So export flattened, export everything flattened. And we're going to make this one R3 for revision 3.tga. Let's jump back into, actually let's save our file here. Jump back into Max. Grab our column and create a copy. Again, Max is complaining about that UV problem, so just open up a channel info and copy your UVs from one channel into the next, and that will fix that right back up again. Let's jump into our material editor. Again, we're working sideways because we're creating variations of the same texture, so instead of down, we're going sideways. It's just a good visual reminder of what we're doing and where we are if we want to find them again. Small column R2, R3, that's the new one we just painted up. We'll pipe that into the diffuse channel. We'll turn on our show realistic and show shaded. We have our object selected. Let's assign the material to it. Again, now we have a unique looking texture. Let's select both of these and go into isolation mode so we can work with it a little bit more easily. Just going to select that, ungroup them. Make sure I have the top part selected, and I do. I'm going to group it and put delete me to. Let's move our copy into place. Let's find it where it is. Here it is. Going to rotate it around a little. Move it over. Okay, let's jump back into our 3D viewport here. Small column 2. Delete me 2. We're going to delete that one. Let's jump out of isolation mode. Okay, so now we have our 3 columns here that are all unique. We could do one more, but let's see if we can get away with using 3 different variations of the texture map. And if once we've done that, it looks as if it looks too noticeable, then we can create a 4th. So now it's just a question of selecting a couple of these columns. I just want to ungroup them and fix them before I start replacing them. So I'm going to ungroup. I'm going to select you, group. I'm going to call it delete me. You, I'm going to ungroup. I'm going to select that column, group, and we'll call this one delete me too. And this one just here. Let's group that and call it delete me 3. Okay, now let's exit isolation mode. And so that's these 3 columns that we've separated. So let's jump into our top viewport, I think. It'll be easier for us to work in our top viewport. So we've got that one, and that one. Let's start here with this column. Let's make a copy of it. Again, we've got that problem with our channel info, so let's just fix that by copying the UVs from this one back to this one. Okay. Now, let's rotate it around like that. And just get it lined up. Doesn't have to be exact, but roughly in the same position. Let's select our original one, delete me, and delete it. Let's work with this one. We're going to skip the middle one here and work with this one. So let's drag out a copy. Again, let's just copy our UVs across. Now let's rotate it 180 degrees, so it's going to be around like that. It's not 180 degrees because the column's on a different angle, but the opposite side to what we're seeing here. Let's move this one into position. Why replace the geometry? It's a good question. We could do it both ways. In fact, let's try that one. Generally, I'll replace the geometry if I've done a chamfer on the edges, which I haven't actually done yet. So there really isn't a reason for me to be replacing the geometry. Let's try doing a what you suggested. Let's have a look. Let me just move this one into position because we're still going to have to rotate the models anyway. And that's interesting. Why is that like that? Let me just select the old one first. Okay, let's try what you're suggesting with this one just here. So we used that texture, and this is 2. So that was the original, that was R2, and that was R3. So we're still going to have to, because we did a render to texture and these are untextured, we're still going to have to use that channel info. So if we copy the UV maps from channel 1 there, we paste them into our UVs. Now you see, The other thing is these are all separate objects. So to do what you've said, why are we replacing them and not just copying the texture over? Because when I modeled them as all separate boxes to create the column or the base. We're still going to have to go into isolation mode, and we're going to have to attach them all before we can copy the UVs over anyway. And a lot of times it's just going to be easier to replace the geometry than to go through each individual piece, ungroup them because of the way I've modeled this particular model, ungroup them and then attach them all together and then copy the UVs and then assign the texture. By doing it this way, we're saving the fact that we have to reattach all the pieces, copy the UVs, which we may have to do anyway, and then assign the texture. Yeah, it's just in this case, it's easier. What you suggest is really valid. Generally, if you're using this exactly the same geometry, so that you get same UVs, that's a good way to do it. You know, you select the object, you assign the texture. You'll have to copy the UVs over because we did a render to texture. But yeah, no, that's not a valid way to do it. Just in this case, because they're all individual pieces, and we'd have to attach them all individually anyway. It's just as quick and easy to copy and move the bit that's already been done. That way, we don't have to reassign textures. We don't have to attach all the pieces. So we did that one there, we did that one there, so let's do this one. Was it that one? Am I getting confused? Let me have a look. We have that one. We have that one. Yeah, so it's this one. That's right. Let's jump back into our top viewport. No idiosyncrasy with Max. It's just a different way to do it. That's all, really. And like I said, if these weren't all separate pieces that had to be joined together, then that would be a great way to do it as well. But because they are different pieces, they're separate pieces, it's just as quick and easy for me to do it this way. So I'm just going to select that object. And we'd still have to copy the UV maps over to them anyway. Paste. I will do that when I do the chamfer on the edges. I'll be copying and pasting that, so I will show you that really quickly once I finish this column just here. So I'm just going to rotate that one so it's facing that way. I want it to face that way. Now these columns are also a little bigger than the ones that were there originally. Not sure why the ones that are there are a bit smaller. They shouldn't really be. They should all be consistent. So I'm just going to move that into position. Select the old one and delete it. Okay. So now if we look at our columns here, they all look unique, even though we've only used 3 texture maps and we've textured up 6 columns. Because we've rotated them and alternated them, they all look unique, they all look individual. You're not going to notice that you've copied the texture from one set to the next. And it saved you a whole heap of time just doing 3 texture maps as opposed to 6. And we may be able to get away with just those 3 by alternating it all the way around the outside. We may not have to do the 4th texture. But I do want to show the chamfering because we do need to make sure that these columns are not hard edged. So I'm going to isolate that selection. And see, at the moment they are hard edged. So I'm going to collapse the stack to an edit poly. Go into edge mode and select our edges. I could select the entire model and deselect the bits that I don't want, but by doing it this way, I know that I'm getting every edge. So for instance, I could do a selection over the entire model and deselect edges I didn't want, but I prefer to select the ones I do want as opposed to the ones I don't. And that way I'm sure that I've got all of them and haven't missed one. And we only have to do it once, so it's not a big deal. So let's select those edges there, that one there. That one there, that one there, that one there, that one there. That one there. Got those. Okay, they're all selected on the top. Let's make sure the bottom is done now. So that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. Yeah, no, I agree. Selecting all and then trying to deselect the ones that you don't want, I find takes you longer than making sure you select just the ones that you're going to be using. Okay, so we have all of the edges selected that we want to fix. We're going to go into our Modify tab and throw on a chamfer. We don't want to chamfer it up that much, so we're going to pull that back. I always like to do 3 or 4 edge loops here and pull it back just a bit. So I don't want it too smooth because it is a column after all and it's supposed to be squarish. Okay, so we've done that. I'm going to select both of those, and so before I do that, I'm going to okay, we'll go back up here. Let's exit isolation mode. Jump back over here. I'm going to collapse this stack now. I do want to copy and paste between them, but to do that I'm going to have to throw on another edit poly modifier so I can copy it. I can't copy a base modifier, it won't let me. So throw on an edit poly, well, we don't want to. We're going to isolate that selection again. Select our edges. I wouldn't have had to redo this again if I'd remembered to put an edit poly modifier on top of the original. Because I forgot to do that, I'm just going to have to quickly select these edges again before I can copy and paste them. See what I mean by max? We'll get it to try and save a copy. Thankfully we saved it, and I think Max will try and save a copy for us here anyway. And it did manage to save a copy, so I'm just going to double check that it did do what it was supposed to do and resave it. So I'm going to load up Max quickly and reload that saved autosave that Max made. Sometimes Max will do an autosave like that after a crash, and the autosave program, autosave version won't load. When you load it, it'll crash Max again. So it always pays to save your work regularly, regardless of whether Max autosaves for you. Okay, let's wait for Max to fully load. Yeah, Max has that feature as well. You can have it autosave every few minutes. I turn it off because I find when it doesn't autosave, that's the recover, let's open that up. I find that when it doesn't autosave, it slows down my machine, even though it's only for maybe a few seconds as I'm working. I don't like that, it annoys me. So I turn autosave off and I just make sure I physically save the file manually, regularly. Which, like I said, we did that just before it crashed anyway. I'm just making sure that Max can reload this recovered file, and if it can't, then we have our the version we saved just beforehand. Still loading it in. Okay. Just going to go into my modified tab. All right, it saved it. It wasn't a problem. I'm going to resave it now though as a new version into my Garden Terrace folder. I'll save it as revision 10, not revision 9. Yeah, I found that when, like you said, when you're doing something and it decides to do an autosave, it slows you right down. It can sort of hang the program for a few seconds while it's saving, and I find that more annoying than me just physically remembering to save regularly, which is what I generally do. Just going to pull out. Okay. I actually think we may leave it there for today, guys. We'll continue doing work on this tomorrow. I'll be back on again tomorrow at 5 p.m. US time, 4 p.m. now that daylight savings is finished there. That's 11 a.m. in Australia and 12 a.m. in the UK. I always post to my Twitter account at PhilDoes3D 15 minutes before I go live. So if you want to keep an eye on my Twitter page, you'll see when I'm just about to go live. I will be back on again tomorrow though at 5 p.m. Thank you for watching, Galen. I always appreciate having somebody in chat to talk to. It's always a pleasure talking to people on Twitch. Hopefully maybe I'll see you again tomorrow. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream, and yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.